Welcome to Seekers and Finders, the podcast where we explore the infinite pathways to truth, creativity, and connection.
One of the things that I move with is gratitude. Gratitude is the heart. Gratitude is the essence for me of everything. It's to be grateful for everything that arises, because everything that's arising is a gift. I went out and I laid down on the chaise and put on Jayasara, and I was listening to her, the Dzogchen and Mahamudra, a series of meditations. And one of them was about looking for the mind. And I went looking for the mind, and I found emptiness. There was nothing there. There was nothing solid there. And then, just after that happened, what opened up was this empty luminosity. When that empty luminosity, when that opened up, it felt viscerally as if the blood was being drained out of my body and I was becoming lighter and lighter. Literally, I thought it almost felt like I could have floated away.
Okay, today's guest is a good friend of mine. We go back quite a ways. Irene Kendig. She lives in Charlottesville, Virginia. We have a similar background in that we both took the S training way back when at different times, and then together at the Omega Institute, together we took the Vortex Healing foundational course. We both took the Finders course. She's a member of this community I talk about a lot, and we talk about a lot, the Perfectly Okay, or the POK community of people, mostly people. Anybody can join now, but it started out for people who graduated from this Finders course that we all took. And so Irene is part of that. And then we have these meetings and stuff. So I know Irene for a long time. So Irene is really, in my book, one of the top-notch people in terms of the whole, seeking, finding, exploring world. So she's good. Here she comes. Irene, we were just talking about you.
You were?
Yeah, and Stefan said he heard the radio show that we did. I did an interview on my radio show, Seekers and Finders, and he has got a lot of questions for you. But one thing in particular, he was I don't know, it popped out at him when you were discussing your experience with emptiness, or what we call luminous emptiness. But before we get to all that,
Thank you. Can I say hello?
If you insist, if you want to.
Hi, Stefan.
Hi, Irene. How are you?
I'm so happy to be here with you guys.
I'm happy you're here as well. I listened to your radio interview with Gary, and it was luminescent. So we'll get into the whole topic that you discussed, but Gary's going to run the program right now, and then I'll jump in when I love your glasses, by the way.
I just got them. They're brand new.
They're awesome. And
Thank you.
My other question is, do you have a ton of snow in Virginia where you are?
Yes, we
Well,
do.
welcome to the club. I'm in
where?
Vermont.
Oh, you're in Vermont.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Welcome to the club.
Yes. Yes.
Good.
Gary, thank you so much for the invitation too.
I really wanted
I love you so much, my brother from another mother.
Here we go. Sending hearts, sending love.
Boy.
It's all about the love.
It is.
Well, the fact is, I often talk about this community that we're all part of. Perfect. Okay. It's a very loving and supportive community. And now that anyone, you don't have to be a graduate of the Jeffrey Martin's Finders course anymore to be
Right.
part of it. That's how the whole thing started. We wanted to get together and stay in touch. But anybody can join. It's a really loving, supportive community. And now, I know the problem that a lot of seekers face is they're kind of out there by themselves. Well, now with the internet, of course, you can hook up with a million groups. But we have personal contact. We have gatherings and stuff. Anyway, so let's kick it off the usual way. Just give us a little background, Irene, how you came to this whole thing of, seeking and searching and spiritual quest. And then we'll launch into, maybe we'll just launch into Stefan's questions, but give us a little context for this conversation.
All right. So I think I was always seeking. Even when I was a kid, when I was 7 or 8 years old, I could remember wondering who would I be if we gathered all the important people in my life in one room? Who would I be? Who would I show up as? Because I was different with different people. I showed up as daddy's little girl, and with my uncle, I was the intellect. And, so like it was confusing. Um, when I was in my early 20s, I did the S training, and I had had a very tumultuous adolescence. And I had gotten into a victim role. And when I went through the S training, which is a 2 weekend kind of awakening format, and when I came out of that 2 weekend experience, I had dropped the victim role. And so then I was wondering, well, who am I? If I'm not the victim, am I a creator? Am I a co-creator? What am I? I didn't know, but I knew I wasn't a victim. And I had some experiences following the S training, some pretty dramatic experiences that really were helpful because I could have easily identified as a victim. One was a rape, and I could have easily seen myself as a victim, but that's not what happened. So following that, I did a lot of healing kinds of things. I did hypnotherapy. I did a training in hypnotherapy and something like internal family systems and welcoming parts, and did a lot of trauma work. And then in 2015, I did the Finders course. And just before doing the Finders course, I had never meditated, and I decided to do a 6-week meditation course. And during the first week, after I got the instructions for how to meditate, I sat down on my bedroom floor and I meditated. And when I stood up 45 minutes later, I was no longer in the bedroom. You could say that the bedroom was in me. It was just a total flip, a total turnaround. And then I did the Finders course, and the Finders course really deepened everything that had happened. And it deepened so much that at one point I remember sitting on the couch in my living room and not knowing how to motivate myself to get up, because it seemed like so much of my egoic pursuits, like they were no longer fueling any motivation. And so that dropped away. And then I did the Finders course a second time. So I really spent 4 months in 2015, then I took a break, and then I did another 4 months of the Finders course. And that kind of, you know, shook the core of everything. Everything was really kind of the core of my beliefs. Everything was up for grabs. And that's a great place to be when everything is up for grabs, isn't it? So, yeah. And then I had an experience in Mexico recently, and we can get into that. but that gives you a little bit of background. I also got a master's degree in spiritual psychology along the way and wrote a book. Yeah.
So I wouldn't bring something up that you mentioned about sitting on the couch and not wanting to get up. Um, when you get to that point where you become the witness of your ego, there is a transition where ambition drops away.
Yes.
And I think it has a lot to do with the libido, which is so connected to the personality and the ego that now later in this conversation, you were talking about peace. And I'm just referring to your conversation with Gary on the radio, uh, escaping to peace and finding a way not to make that a different room. But the ambition seems to dissipate. And it happened to me as well. And I found that I had to, in order for me to stay in a manifestation state, which is what we have to do as human beings anyway, in order to survive, I had to find something that was equal with my sense of lack of ambition and my passion for creativity. So I think creativity has a lot to play in this, but this whole ambition thing, as you mentioned, seems to have dropped away. And that's really wonderful. So why don't we go on and start the steps of where you went from there until you had mentioned the retreat. And of course, that is a very important part of this conversation. Well, you said in the interview with Gary about giving up seeking. And I found that very interesting because every day that we get up, maybe the word seeking is incorrect, but we are moving forward.
Right.
And you may not, seeking is a new age thing, and we've got it as part of our podcast name. So, we are seekers and finders.
Yeah.
But it gives a kind of, awkward mentality to it because now everybody wants to say, well, we're already there. We're not seekers anymore. We just have to realize we're already there. But we're not already there. We're in the background we are, but we're still human beings and we're still dealing with everyday situations, as you mentioned, moving out of the peace room into, a chaotic state. So we are, in a sense, moving down that road and discovering. Maybe we should call it discovering rather than seeking. I don't know. I mean, you and
I think
Gary talked about how you're not seekers anymore. And I'm
right.
saying that I think we're still going down that road. As long as we're alive, we're discovering, we're expanding,
Yes,
so
but there's a
maybe.
difference. I would say this, Stefan, there's a difference between seeking and discovering. There's an impulse to seeking and a drive to seeking, as if this isn't it. It's somewhere else. That drops away. Then there's definitely deepening, embodiment, all of that. But you're no longer thinking that it's elsewhere, that what you're looking for is somewhere else to be found. And I think that's an important distinction because it's such a drive for seekers and they're looking for this something. And the moment they're looking for it, they're looking at the same time away from it.
I agree 100%. When we first came to the center, before we were disciples of Sri Chinmoy, he would call the visitors up on the stage and refer to us as sincere seekers. So it's a nomenclature that we're accustomed to. And perhaps because of our relationship with the guru, it's either stuck in us as a good thing or a bad thing. So the word doesn't really mean anything anymore to us. I hope that I haven't come to the end of the journey because so far it's been incredible. And I want to discover what else there is, um, from not a mental construct, but since I've discovered my heart center and have gone very deep, because both Gary and I left the center I left in the late 70s, Gary in 1980, but I've been meditating ever since 1971. And the instruction that we were given at that time was from somebody who had been meditating for a long time and guided us into, using vibrational stuff and everything else. So we had a pretty good instructor, whether we ended up liking him or not. And our meditations have grown, at least mine has. I know Gary has a different take on it and he can discuss that. But my meditations are extremely deep. And as you said in your interview on the radio, uh, it carries, we're always meditating. Once you reach that stage where you can access it, and I think that's an important point to make, it's always with you. And you can move into it at any second. And we'll talk about that later, because we've both had extraordinary experiences moving into it at any second during the day. So I want you to talk about your experience that you had when you went on your retreat, your solo retreat to Mexico. And then if you expound upon that, so the listeners knows what we're talking about and where it came from, then we can move on to the question. Because the question that I'm going to ask you has to do with your, how you represented that solo retreat. So can you tell us about that?
Sure. So in 2023, I went to attend Angelo DeLullo's Zen retreat, his 7-day silent retreat. It was the only retreat I've ever attended, and it was fabulous. I came right up against the mind, and it was difficult and arduous and freeing and so many things. And just to be silent for 7 days, to be offline for 7 days, that in itself. And so when registration opened for the 2024 7-day retreat, I immediately signed up. And as it got closer, this was the first week of December in 2024, and as we got closer to that week, I noticed there was no energetic pull toward that retreat, and there was just no energy for it. And I got the sense that I wasn't meant to go there, and that really what was up for me was to do my own silent retreat. And I started looking online. This was a Thursday. I had until that Saturday to withdraw and get my money back. And it was 7 days, room and board and everything. It was, I think, $2,400. And so this was on a Thursday. By Saturday, I had to withdraw to get my money back. And so I'm looking online for, well, I think I'd like to get out of the country for those 7 days. And I'm looking online, and I come across this place in Mexico, this town called Zihuatanejo. And there's a place there that grabs my attention. It's called Cala de Mar. It's a hotel. And I like it because it looks like it's kind of like ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. Like it'll be very chill, quiet, a place that I can do my thing. And so that afternoon, I have a call with some friends of mine, some colleagues who also completed their master's in spiritual psychology. We were in the same class together, and we were a support group. And we've been meeting once a month for the last 18 years. So we had our call that day. And I said to them, I'm not feeling drawn to do the Angelo retreat, and I'm thinking about Mexico. Tell me if you get any hit about anything. And one of the women, Jennifer, says, after I share, she says, here's my feedback. I don't see you going to the Angelo retreat. I see you going to Mexico. And some friends of mine went to a place in Zihuatanejo, Mexico, called Cala de Mar. And they said it was phenomenal. Now, that was the place I'd been looking at. So immediately I knew that's the place I'm going. That's the meaning that I gave to that meaningful coincidence, that was pointing me in the direction of where to go. So I immediately called the place, I made a reservation, and almost exactly what the retreat would have cost, the retreat, the $2,500, that's almost exactly what it cost for me to just switch locations. Uh, and so I was meditating. I was really meditating all the time prior to going. But I was really, once I hit the road, once I leave my home, I'm like a pilgrim who knows nothing on a journey. And there's a certain space that happens when I'm traveling, where there's just a lot of presence, uh, and letting go of control and going with the flow, especially. Um, and so I was on my way to Mexico. I was on the flight, and I decided to listen to a Zen monk. Her name is Jayasara, and she does a lot of uh, the teachings of awakened beings. She does a lot of these meditations, and I decided to put on my headphones and listen to her the moment I got on the plane. And I put on a mask, and so I was just in my little bubble, you know. And at one point, after about an hour and a half, I got up and I went back to the bathroom. And I stopped. I was right by the galley, and I asked the flight attendant if he had a little something I could eat. And he opens a drawer and he says, "How about yogurt? How about, I got a bar?" And I said, "Do you have anything warm to eat?" And he said, "Oh, well, let me get you a warm croissant from first class." And what came out of my mouth was, "Oh, that's so kind of you. I wouldn't want to eat that in front of my fellow passengers, however. Could I eat it back here in the galley?" And he says, "Oh no, I'll bring it to you. I'll bring it to you." And I said, the galley was very, very tiny. And I said, "Okay, well, I'm in 10D." And he said, "I know where you are." And he brings me not a warm croissant, but he brings me a whole breakfast from first class. And he says, "Can I get you orange juice? Can I get you coffee?" And this to me was already one of the things that I move with is gratitude. Gratitude is the heart. Gratitude is the essence for me of everything. It's to be grateful for everything that arises, because everything that's arising is a gift. And so when he did this, it was just I was just so deeply grateful for that kindness that was also reflective, I thought, of the space that Jayasara was providing. And so I arrived in Mexico and I went to this place called Cala de Mar, and there are 59 rooms, and they are all on a cliff. They all overlook the Pacific Ocean. And each room has an infinity pool. And I had asked if they could arrange to have a hammock on the terrace. And they had they had a hammock and an infinity pool and a place to lounge, and then the bedroom and a bed. And I pretty much went from the bed to the hammock to the infinity pool to the lounge and just kind of going around meditating, listening to Jayasara, to all of these incredible meditations. And at the end of, I don't know, day 4 or so, I just knew it was time to take a break. Just stop meditating, go get a massage, go take a walk. And that's what I did. I went across the lobby. I pretty much never left the room. But I had access, obviously, to the ocean, and so I did. I went and got a massage, and then I turned on Netflix and I watched the Martha Stewart documentary, and I was so inspired by her. She's like the phoenix that rises out of the ashes, right? And I watched that, and I watched a couple of other documentaries, and then I went to sleep, and I woke up around 6 in the morning. And I was going out a lot onto the terrace, like at 3 in the morning. I'd go and lay in the hammock because it was very, very hot and humid in Cihuatanejo. And so it was probably, I don't know, 90 some odd degrees and incredibly humid. And I had left the East Coast where it was 20 degrees and snow on the ground. So there were these extremes going on. And, but anyway, I went out and I laid down on the chaise and put on Jayasara, and I was listening to her, the Dzogchen and Mahamudra, a series of meditations. And one of them was about looking for the mind. And I went looking for the mind, and I found emptiness. There was nothing there. There was nothing solid there. And then, just after that happened, what opened up was this empty luminosity. It was so luminous, but it was also incredibly intimate. And it was the intimacy that surprised me so much, because you think about emptiness, you think like you open a box and there's nothing in there, it's empty, there's nothing there. But this wasn't that. This was intimate, luminous. It was home. It felt like I could have stayed there forever. I could have let it take me and just take me. And it was just that kind of familiar. It was familiar and intimate, and it just was incredible. And I stayed with that as long as I did. And then I got up, and it feels like that emptiness has been with me ever since. That it's available all the time, because it's the heart of gratitude, and emptiness seem to be kind of the heart of it. And then I noticed that there are fewer and fewer triggering events. There's also a big distinction between like a before and after. So before, it was, if a triggering event occurred, it would be, oh darn, another triggering event. I thought I was further along than this. Afterwards, a triggering event comes up, and it's more, oh, I'm so grateful that I get to discover. There's the word that you were using, Stefan. I get to discover what's here, but it's not a problem. It's an opportunity. That's the difference. It's no longer a situation that, yuck. It's an opportunity to see, where is there attachment here? What's the rub? What's going on here? This is wonderful. It's freedom. And so I had mentioned previously that there was a time when I was experiencing a lot of peace, but the peace was the result of moving away from discomfort. So as long it was something uncomfortable came up, I just stayed in my peace place, because I didn't go to discover what it was about. I steered clear of it. And so it was like being in a peace prison, and this was different now. This was leaning into the discomfort, welcoming the discomfort, And then also dropping the narrative of whatever had triggered it and going into the felt sense in the body, which for me is a lot of the embodiment of the awakening, is bringing it into the body. And we do that by not escaping from what's uncomfortable and by being present to what's arising in the body. And in that process, I think a lot of trauma gets released because it's in the cells of our body, and it remains there until we're willing to feel that which we've been avoiding and just welcome it, let it be.
So that's a beautiful experience.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, there's so many things, and I'd just like to start with the synchronicity of your friend and you coming up with
Right.
the same place. Okay, so you have been on the journey for a long time. The switch has been turned on. And because the switch is turned on, and I believe that every being on this planet has a propensity towards this discovery. That's why we're here, to evolve,
Absolutely.
evolve to that point. Once you get onto the journey, even if you step off for a while, it's still there pulling you back. You've surrendered to it. You've made a commitment to it some way. And even if you walk away from it for a while, the commitment is still there within the agreement that you make with your soul. And this is what I believe. So, everybody else can contradict me on underneath this podcast, and that's fine. But I believe we make a commitment with our soul once we get on the journey. And you mentioned gratitude. So the soul is offering its gratitude to you for making that commitment finally and giving you grace. And that's the other G that I believe in, is the grace to
Yes.
be able to walk on this path and have things happen. So this synchronicity that happened to you is because you are sensitive now. You become sensitive to the multi-vibrational world that is all around you, because that thing you said that the mind is, you couldn't find the mind. You still had a visceral experience when this all happened to you, correct? In other words, for me, it's like you can feel it through all of your molecules. It's when you reach that height, it's not just a thinking, because if it is a thinking, it's not happening. So it is a visceral experience in the entire body, and it vibrates at such a rate, almost, I would say, close to light speed, that it can transport you to another place, right?
It's so interesting, Stefan, that you're saying this, because when that empty luminosity, when that opened up, it felt viscerally as if the blood was being drained out of my body and I was becoming lighter and lighter. Literally, I thought it almost felt like I could have floated away. It's so interesting. And I don't know if I mentioned that previously with Gary, but it was a lightening and a lightening of the physical.
So when you go to sleep at night and you have dreams, if you are a lucid dreamer, that's basically what's happening. Your ethereal self is traveling, it's leaving, it's still tied to the physical, but it's leaving. And if you are a deep dreamer, you can remember your dreams, you can get experiences out of them. It's a reward that you're given for the being able to be on the journey. But
I'm sensing a lot of rewards happening right now.
right.
I mean everything from I'm telling you, the timing, the divine timing of things, the effortlessness with which things happen here. But also you mentioned dreaming, and I'd like to just mention that in August, so I went on this retreat in December, this past December. August prior to that, about August, September, I had a dream. It was a very important dream. In this dream, I'm flying and I'm looking down at a path, and this path extends. I can see no end to it. It just goes on and on. That I can see the like a horizon. It's just never ending, or I don't see an end to it. And then the next scene, I'm standing. I'm standing on something and looking now at the path from a different perspective. And as I'm standing there and looking at the path, and there's no one else on this path, and there's nothing else on this path. There are no trees, there are no vehicles, there are no people. It's just a path. And as I'm looking at it, a thought begins to surface, to form. And the thought is, looks like a very sunny path. And I use retinol on my skin, and I wonder if I would need sunscreen. And just before that thought is going to turn into a concern, I feel two hands underneath my armpits lift me up and place me on the path. And there's total relief. So prior to that trip, there was a placing me on the path. Someone, something placed me on the path, and there was immediate relief. And it was a very significant dream because that really was, it seemed like it was the end of something and the beginning of something new.
Yes, I think if you find a road or a path in your dream, you must take heed of it, for it is identifying something for you to see in your life, and it could be abstract, but if you can remember it when you get up, you have to give it some thought, some silent thought, and see where it is. Now, I just wanted to clarify something. Okay, so when I was listening to your interview, there was all this talk about the two of you agreeing on following the same ideals as far as seeking and this, that, and the other thing. And I realized at that point that everything that exists is a singularity. It's an individual entity. Nothing is the same. Even though the genes may be similar, every body that exists in this universe, in this cosmos, has a singular mission or identification. So nobody thinks alike. So for us to, not us, but like teachers and things, to try and guide people in certain modalities, we'll say, there will be those who really feel for it, like you felt when you went to the Finder's course and when you were you lost that side of you in the S courses. And then there are those who don't. They have their other path to walk. And I don't think there's any direct way that you can give advice to anybody on meditation, on, gratitude, on how to do this or how to do that, because everybody, even though there may be some similarities there, they still have this thing going on inside of them that is their individual self. And they will work it out as long as they can get onto the journey. Somehow, I believe, now this is my faith, that the spirit is so strong that once you identify with it, it will take you to wherever it wants to take you. And that's why when you mention gratitude, once you get on the path of spirit, gratitude is the main thing. You know that you're there when everything that you do comes from a place of gratitude. Because if it's ego-based, you're going to be reactive. And the other thing is, it's wonderful to be alone and follow this road. But if you're in a relationship with someone, in a marriage or some kind of situation, you're always going to have a give and take in some way. And you've got to work that out too,
Exactly.
So, I mean, this whole thing about peace, that's what I wanted to get to. I think peace is a space that exists in that deep space of meditation, that once it's there, there's no room that you have to go to be in peace. It's always going to be the undercurrent of everything that you do, even if you get agitated about something, it can always pull you back to that place to balance you out. So that was my um, reaction to what you had said earlier about the room of peace and leaving it, and then finding, that there was
Peace just is. Peace just is, even when there's warring going on. Peace is, right? It's fundamental, like gratitude.
this always comes back to me about thinking that you're there, the mind creating this illusion that you're there without having an actual visceral experience, like you said, and like I've had, where your whole body feels it. It's not just a mental construct that's
Right.
saying, I'm there. So, can you explain where you went from that empty mind space to where you not your mind was no longer driving the cart, that you just became, because it is a state of being. It's no longer a state of thinking.
Right, right. Yeah, no, in fact, I spend very little time in conceptual thought. I mean, it's just like, nah. Uh, it's like being, it's like it's that ballpark is long gone. So we're doing our best within this, you know, human experience to communicate that which is divine, that which is
So,
divine.
oh, that's wonderful. Now, this brings up another topic, um, and I brought this up before in the podcast. I've gotten to the point where a word or a, a piece of music can bring me into a deep state of uh, tears, and they're tears of joy, of bliss, because I can actually visualize seeing the word come out from whoever's saying it, if I'm watching something on TV, vibrating into me. I know this is going to sound silly, but and it's like a tuning fork, and it hits that divine space in the heart that opens up that bliss place. And it happens with music, some tonalities of music, and some words that are said, that I could be watching something on TV and somebody will mention something and it'll just burst into tears. Do you have that experience at all?
Well, first of all, I think that's a really appreciate your sharing that, because that gives me insight into how you experience things, right? And as you were saying, we're all so unique. What a wonderful experience to have. First of all, music can just transport us. Music is incredible, but that it's like a tuning fork that actually that a word could be like a tuning fork that resonates within you and opens something up. What a beautiful experience that this is possible for you. That's lovely. I also think that people are very much into, like, when I went to Mexico, this totally came as a surprise, right? I've had lots of peak experiences, but again, it's really not about the peak experience. It's about the letting go of what got let go of there. That then I continue walking on the path and something has dropped away. It's the attachment to mind, it's seeing through to the emptiness, and it's uh, there's a freedom, there's a liberation that just wasn't, it's just amplified. And when I landed back in at Washington Dulles Airport, coming back from Zihuatanejo, I had to go over to Tyson's Corner. It's a mall, and I had to pick something up before driving 2 hours home. And I went into this department store, and I have to tell you that whatever this vibration was, whatever this was attracting people, and people were looking my way and interacting with me, and I was interacting with them in a way that I can't know what was going on for them, but there was a lightness here and an emptiness here that was, it just was so vibrant. And so I didn't leave anything in Mexico. I mean, something dropped away in Mexico for sure. Something opened up. But it's not about now my getting back to some peak experience, right? That's a waste of time. And a lot of people do that. They're like, they had some peak experiences and now they're all about getting back to it, going in the wrong direction. That's over, that's done, that's the past, that does not exist anymore. Everything is to be found right here and now. That's the problem also that seekers have, that they're looking somewhere else for this awakening. Awakening only happens here. It doesn't happen there. It happens right here, right now. The circumstances are right, whatever, and something happens, but it's always right here. And I do remember when I did the Finder's course and I was experiencing, a moment of, peace and just like this. And I remember thinking, what is it that's important to remember about this? And what was important to remember was the doorway is always right here through what's presenting itself now. That's always the doorway. Sink in now to what's here now. Don't go looking elsewhere. Don't look. Heard a funny quote the other day about don't go looking for bear tracks in the woods when the bear is in your house.
Right.
It's right
Well,
here, right now. So whatever is arising, that's the portal, that's the doorway, that's the Dharma gate.
well, nothing exists except now.
So
Because
where are we going to go look for something else?
we can only be now.
We
So
can only be now. Exactly right. Thank you,
so
Stefan.
when you were walking through the mall after you came back, and you felt this lightness, I'm wondering if you happened to notice the people that you were passing, how they reacted to you. Did you have any note?
I
Because
did.
I
I
have it on
did.
the streets in Vermont. I get, nodded to and smiled
They
at.
I watched, I was walking out and I turned and I saw people like this looking. They were looking
Right.
like, what is that? What is that? Now, I don't know what they were experiencing, but I noticed their attention was over here. And I say it was the emptiness, it was the vibrant, luminous, intimate emptiness that they were sensing. Now, I can't know that for sure, but that was my sense.
Well, I mean, I believe that uh, when we evolve to the point where uh, the ego understands itself without being reactionary and with having a sense of compassion, that we'll all be able to feel each other's lightness, and that also will bring up the higher state of consciousness inside of you without thinking about it, because we're so mentally
Oh, totally
stuck on
conditioned.
this planet. It is absolutely ridiculous. And I mean, I am so, talk about gratitude. I am so grateful that my sensibility, I was in the music business in my early 20s, and it was a passion that I always had. And I always wanted to do that. And I think that's why I react to music so strongly now, because I left it basically when I became a disciple and followed that journey. But it's always been such a passion of mine, and it is a part of who I am. I had it when I was very young. I started dancing when I was very young. I loved rhythm. So
Mm.
rhythm was always part of my thing. And I found that once that rhythm comes into a state of sync, because I think a lot of us are out of sync a good part of the time. But once that body rhythm comes in sync with the heart center, because the heart has a resonance off of it. Even doctors say there's some kind of a resonance that comes off of the physical heart, not
Mm.
just the pumping, but the vibration of it as well. And deep inside there, where the heart chakra is where compassion lies and gratitude lies. And even though some people follow the journey of Raja Yoga, which is the yoga of the mind, and like Sri Aurobindo found his realization through the illumined mind, I couldn't connect to that further than possible. So there's a very, the whole visceral thing is for me, and I see that you experience it as well. Um, but do you find yourself in space at any time? I mean, I don't know if you get spaced out, but do you get spaced out?
Spaced out like
Well,
what
not
would
a
that?
daydream, but just kind of like
No,
you go off.
I don't. I would say that I go off. There's just it's just there's not much thinking going on. There's not much there's almost no self-referential thought, so it's not about thoughts that tie back to a self. Um, um, it's just really quiet in my head.
Right. But
I'm
that
just
state of meditation where your
Yeah.
mouth kind of like opens and you're in
Oh,
that state
yeah,
of
kind
feel
of.
where
Yeah, yeah,
there's
yeah. A lot.
nothing there.
Yeah,
Does that
that.
happen to you? Do you find yourself drifting off sometimes just in that state
Yeah,
of emptiness,
yeah,
that
totally.
luminescence? Okay.
Oh, yeah, totally. Like there's just nothing going on up here, and it's like it's just quiet, and that peace that I spoke of, it's ever present regardless of circumstance. It just is always there. It's always in the forefront, always, no
How
matter
do your
what's
friends
going
treat
on.
you? Do you have friends that are following the same journey you are, or their own spiritual journey?
Yeah, oh yeah. We have a meditative group. We meet here at my house every couple weeks, and I was part of a sangha previous to that. And yes, uh, uh, yes, all of my friends tend to be uh, people who are on the path in whatever way they are.
Yeah, we started a group. My wife and I started a group when we were living in New Jersey, and we had people come on Tuesday nights, and it was absolutely fantastic. And I would actually have this very Zen kind of music, a combination of Zen and Indian
Mhm.
chanting. And I had nice speakers set up, and then we would all sit in a circle and do like a 40-minute meditation. And a lot of these people had never meditated before. And their experience was absolutely wonderful. Nobody led it, nobody said anything. All we did at the beginning was tell them, sit there quietly and just concentrate on your breath and see how far you go. And I would say most of the people had a wonderful experience.
And I would say too, this is my experience, is that if you have one person who is, perhaps that was the space that you were bringing forward, it makes it available to everyone else, right? So you're holding space, everybody else, it's like that tuning fork. Everyone else starts to be able to access places within themselves. Why? Because you have accessed it within you, and it makes it available like a resonance to the others.
Well, that's what happened with the guru with us. I think Gary
Yeah,
will agree. He was holding space for all of us,
yeah.
and we were resonating he was bringing us to his resonant level. So,
Yeah, or not to his resonance, to the resonance within yourself,
yes, but I mean,
right?
he was the tuning fork. You know,
Yes, yes, exactly.
you know, you the two of you got into each other so well during the interview that when I was listening to you, Gary was talking just as much as you were. And I'm saying to myself, oh, Irene, come on, I want to hear more of what you have to say. But Gary was interjecting so much because he was so energized.
It was such
So,
a good, but he was just bringing out, it was just like such a mutual kind of bubbly kind of
yes, it
thing.
was. It was.
Yeah, yeah.
But now I realized that I couldn't stop asking questions of you either. It's something that you drew out of me as well. So at this juncture, I'd like to pass the baton uh, to Mr. Gary, and I'm sure he's got more questions to ask you. Or maybe he'll contradict everything I
No,
said.
no. Well, see, here's the thing. The thing is, I don't have any questions to ask Irene or anybody because in talking about the Finder's Course and our experience of the path several years ago. What fell away from me was questions. I don't have questions anymore. And one reason why I don't have any questions for Irene is because of all the people in our community, I would say I can't think of anyone in our community who I am more in tune with than Irene. Her realization, her experience, her now her nowness, so I don't have any questions. I had questions during the interview because I wanted to hear about her journey to Mexico and things, and I wanted to bring out certain things. But see, I don't, I'm at the place too where there's not a lot of self-narrative and what we were saying, conceptualization and theoretical stuff and definitions and philosophy. That's just not going on here. And I don't really have questions because that whole questioning thing fell away. Irene brings out, as far as I'm concerned, the main point of this whole spiritual shtick. Call it what you want to, the spiritual journey, the path, the quest. And that is, it's not about experiences per se, especially peak experiences, because those can be a trap, as Irene illustrated, wanting to get back to, like in my own case, oh, I have to get back to 1972 when I experienced Satchitananda. No, 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 because experiences by their very nature will come and go. But what doesn't come and go? And the real takeaway I got from Irene's experience in Mexico of this luminous emptiness or empty luminosity was that it wasn't an experience because it didn't come and go. It's there now. So she brought it. She didn't leave it in Mexico. She left it. She didn't leave it at all. She brought it with her to the mall in the, wherever the mall was, where the people were turning around looking at it because it's there. And I don't even have to ask Irene because I know, and she may have, I think she alluded to it. It's here right now. And that's where the rubber meets the road. It's not about an experience or a higher thing or someplace else. And this is where the whole seeking thing does fall away. When you or anybody, any seeker, me, anybody seeker, realizes that what we are looking for is not anywhere other than right here, right now, that whole seeking thing does fall away. That doesn't mean, and as Irene pointed out, later developments like embodiment and unfolding and who knows what else, down the road. It's like Irene's dream of the endless, the infinite path. Where does it end? It doesn't. But the seeking does end because you, me, or anyone who has the realization that it is no longer not here. It's no longer somewhere else, either in some guru or some sacred space or some higher realm or any of this stuff or next incarnation, but it's here now. And I think the great thing about what Irene had to say today was that it was so clear, at least to me, and hopefully other people who watch the video, it'll be clear to them too that there is no if you're looking for something elsewhere, as Irene said, you're moving away because it is here now. It's like the koan. What doesn't leave? What is, and you talk about conscious awareness. You could define those terms, but what is it that is here now that never leaves? And no matter what's going on in your life or this, that, the other thing, what's ever present. So thanks, Irene, because you brought this home in spades, as far as I'm concerned, and on steroids. So I want to thank you for that.
Well, thank you, Gary. I also, based on what you said here, because everything you said is so true, is that it's always here, what doesn't come and go. But also that I was thinking about as you were speaking, that when we say it's here now, it's all the self-construct and the conditioning, the beliefs that are on top of it. So the journey is about peeling that stuff away to discover what's always been here and is always here. And so that's the exploration and the discovery of, what is in the way of it? If it's always here, what has been placed in the way of it? What's the self-construct? And seeing through the self-construct, I think, is one of the most important things. That's why it almost takes it out of the spiritual for me, and I'm deeply spiritual, but it takes it out of the spiritual almost into the very clear seeing of the self-construct is what is on top of, and the protection of the self is what's on top of what's always here, which is the peace, the gratitude, and the innocence, because we are also innocent, because we didn't choose the conditioning from our childhood. We got conditioned. So who could you blame? Who could you point a finger at and say, you shouldn't be acting that way? It's all conditioned.
But once again, I want to clarify, at least maybe it's just for myself that I'm clarifying it, but it's all these things don't fall into one basket. Every individual has their own
Sure.
spiritual experience, and no experience that I have is going to be like yours or Gary's or anybody else listening out there. It's my experience, and it could be entirely different than the way you see yours, because
Absolutely.
you do see something. You have to be cognitive of something going on, but we're all individuals, and we're all having this now experience individually. So whoever thinks out there that they've got to follow one particular path or the other, I would say, if you're interested, then sit and go into your heart center a little bit. Don't go into your mind. Don't think about it, but feel what's deep inside of you that's drawing you to it in some way, shape, or form, and follow that instinct, just like the synchronicity that you followed when your friend told you about the place in Mexico and the hotel. The energy was there, you were synchronistic with each other, and the journey was then taken from that point on. Now, you have a book, correct, Irene?
I do.
So why don't we talk about the book? Because I would think that you would want to promote your book. I mean, you've got a beautiful website, and I'd like to, Gary and I would like to, promote it for you as well, if you'd like to do that.
Well, the book is called Conversations with Jerry and Other People I Thought Were Dead. And I started working with a medium back in 2006. A friend called me and she said, "Hey, would you do a session with this woman? She wants to make it her life's work." I thought I was doing my friend a favor, right? I said, "Well, I got a lot on my plate right now, and there's really nobody I want to talk to." She says, she wouldn't charge you. She just wants you to tell other people if you thought she was the real deal. I said, okay. I did this session. She was just spot on, man. She said, I told her I wanted to speak with somebody named Biba. I didn't tell her who Biba was. And she said, Biba's playing cards. She says she's winning. Now, I didn't tell her that that was my mother. And my mother would practically greet me at the door with a deck of cards because she loved to play gin rummy. And some of our most deep, profound conversations took place over games of gin rummy. And so then she connected me with three other people in that call. And then I finished that call and I danced around the house for probably a couple of hours because I knew we were infinite. I knew that death is not what we think it is.
Right.
And it just awakened something in me. It's awakened a fear, dissipated. I spent, I guess, what did we spend a year meeting every day, 5 days a week for 1 hour for over a year. And I asked each person, I had 7 loved ones that I spoke with, and I asked each one the question, what did you experience when you released your last breath on earth? And each one takes me on a journey, but there's so much wisdom about life. It's so much about here now. Um, so it was a wonderful journey. I lost my fear of dying in the process, and a lot of people find a lot of peace when they read the book. It's almost like the book has a certain energetic component to it. It was so delightful to work on it. I couldn't wait to get to my office every day to make that call because she was in another city, so we did this all by phone. Um, yeah, it was just absolutely delightful.
Is the book available on Amazon?
It is available on Kindle.
Oh, that's
It's just
awesome.
not available in paperback.
Okay. So Jerry is the woman that you spoke to on the phone?
No, her name was Jana Anna. Jerry was the husband of a friend of mine, and he had a transcendent experience as a kid, and he dedicated his life to God. He became I think it was a Lutheran minister, some kind of a minister, and then he started traveling to Japan and studying under a Zen master. And then 6 weeks before he transitioned from physical world reality, he was ordained as a Zen monk. So it was quite a journey for him.
I'm sure a lot of people are going to be very interested in this book. Very
Oh,
interested.
cool. One of the things that was very helpful to me along the way was forgiveness, the practice of forgiveness. And but it was a different kind of forgiveness. It wasn't about forgiving other people. It was about forgiving myself for judging other people. And I practice that and continue to. I don't practice it anymore because it's so innate now. But that was a practice for a couple of decades of, noting that judgment is the cause of a lot of suffering, and it's the cause of separation, and that I'm not in a position to judge. I mean, when you just look, it's like I'm not in a position to judge anybody. And so consequently, uh, there's a whole practice that I describe in the book of compassionate self-forgiveness.
Yeah, we can talk about this until we're blue in the face, but to actually be able to do it, with everything that goes on in one's life. I mean, if you want to be a monk, if you want to sit in the cave of your house and just go to the market, once or twice a week to get food, I guess it's easy for you to sit there on top of the mountain. But since we have to deal with everything that's going on in the world, learning how to do that uh, with compassionate forgiveness, first starting with yourself and then understanding what everybody else is going through, because it's very easy to get angry with a lot of the stuff that's going on.
Well, and there's two things that brings up for me. One is that the master's in spiritual psychology was kind of founded in that. So for 2 years, we practiced that. And so you're right, it's not just a concept. It was an actual practice for 2 years ongoingly within the program. But then the other thing, in addition to compassionate self-forgiveness, is also the seeing through how innocent it all is, right? And when you see that people are, as you said, each person is having their own journey, their own experience of now. They have different conditioning from me. We all got conditioned in different ways, um, but that it's so innocent. I saw a mother and a couple of kids at Costco a while back, and the older kid was like beating up a little bit on the younger kid, and she grabbed the older kid, and I'm talking he must have been 6, 7 years old, and she grabs him and she shakes him and she said, you know, you want a hot dog? You're not going to get a hot dog. And I happened to make eye contact with the little boy in that moment. And it was a haunting look. It
Wow.
just haunted me.
Mm.
And when I explored it further, uh, I recognized it was the loss of innocence. It was the loss of innocence. And then I related it back to my own loss of innocence, you know. Uh, And I could see myself as that mother. There were times when I was that mother. There was times when I was that child. And it was just such an organic kind of deep looking at what was happening and the look in his eyes. Um, but recognizing that, the mother is innocent. She was, who knows what kind of childhood she had, right? How can we judge her? We don't know. We don't know what she's been through. We don't know. We have no idea. And so there's that. It becomes so easy not to judge when you recognize how ignorant you are of being in any kind of a position to be able to do that.
Well, I think social media has created a real big stigma with that because it's given voice to everybody. And whereas in the past, voice was only really given to opinions in newspapers, radio show hosts, TV hosts, or you talking to somebody on the street or on the telephone, now it's open to the world. You can just write out your grievances, call anybody you want, any name you want, and it's out there in the world, and it gives it somehow it's empowered you. And that empowerment is so harmful because it just elevates the ego even more into a destructive state. And that innocence that you talk about, that people may see as a state of naivete, is really a place that we must really get back to deep inside ourselves, because that innocent little child still lives inside of us.
Totally. No,
And this is,
wasn't even harmed by that. Actually is intact. The innocence is actually intact. I went looking
right.
for it and I found it.
And it aligns itself with simplicity. Simplicity is the
Yes.
other thing that if we could all just get back to that state of simplicity, not necessarily in your home, living a meager lifestyle, but just in your own way of, I guess it's a way of thinking first, and then moving that thought process down into the visceral state of feeling it, and moving away from the anger state, moving away from the frustration state, which really sticks in your solar plexus. If we have to move out of our solar plexus, which is a big driving force in everybody's life, and move up into the heart center. And I guess there's training on how to do that. Maybe that's the one course everybody should try and take, how to move into the heart center. So
Hmm.
um
I think it would have to start with compassion for ourselves. We're so hard on ourselves. People have such negative internal dialogues going on. They're so self-critical and they live with that. I lived with it for however many years I lived with it, but I don't live with it anymore. So I know that there is freedom from that. Um, and there is relief from that. And that's all part of the self-construct. It's all part of the
well,
conditioning.
narcissistic uh, psychology is really rough to get rid of because you're so wrapped up in yourself. And we've seen how it's being displayed at the moment with world leaders. But I'm curious about the spiritual psychology master's degree that you had. Where did you take that, and what is it about?
It was the University of Santa Monica in Santa Monica, California. It was a 2-year program. It was one weekend a month for 2 years. And in the second year of the program, you had to do a project. You chose a project, and that's where the support teams came into play, that I still meet with my support team after 18 years. Um, and so people did a variety of things. One person decided he was going to do a comedy show. Another woman decided she was going to develop a relationship with herself instead of seeking it outside of herself. Um, so people did all kinds of things. I wrote a book. Some people started a company. You could do anything you wanted as long as it was, something that was your heart desired. That was very important, right? You were called to do that. And and in those 2 years, you were healing yourself. You were deconditioning. You were finding authenticity. It was it was the greatest uh, program for seeing the conditioning and being free of it and developing or making way for the authentic self.
So, is it recognized as a some sort of a science, or it's more esoteric state of
I think it's
being.
very practical. It's the most practical master's program you could ever hope for. However, I don't. The founders of it, he recently they've been doing it for I don't know 30 or 40 years, and they've recently retired. So I don't know who's leading the program anymore. I'm not in touch with the school anymore, so I can't tell you. But it was
But
a phenomenal program. I would highly recommend it.
you don't do treatment for other people. It's basically for yourself.
Some people went on to get degrees as a therapist, or they became coaches. I called myself a soul-centered coach because I could very easily and adeptly facilitate people in healing childhood wounds that were in the way. And again, seeing the innocence with which things like "I'm not good enough," how that was formulated, and recognize how much suffering was coming from uh, um, an innocent child who was trying to make sense of the world and concluded, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not enough, I'm this or that, and then lives with that and proves themselves right for the rest of their lives if they don't heal that.
So, what's your next opportunity coming ahead?
I don't know, but I'm so excited to see what might unfold. Uh, Most recently, I've just started inviting friends to my office to sit. I call it tea time talk. But what it is, it's a deep looking. We sit and we meditate for, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes together. And then whatever wants to arise for them just arises. And somehow the clarity here can facilitate clarity there. We just see what happens. And I'm playing with that to see what happens. And so far, it's been so much fun. It's just, and I don't charge anything for it. It's just come on over, let's explore, let's play, let's see what happens. Bring a challenge, bring a question, bring whatever's there. We'll meditate together, we'll see what arises, and we'll explore it together.
Have you thought about doing it online, like on
Not
Zoom?
yet. I could, not yet though. There's something about the physicality for me
Yes, yeah.
that is there's a transmission that happens on a physical level. So maybe you'll get to online, but right now it's just in my office in this green room.
So, this has been wonderful. Gary
This
basically
was lovely.
put the cork in the bottle on his last statement, and I think that kind of, says it all.
What
Um,
what was the last statement?
My last statement was that, as Irene and I both have discovered on our journeys, that it's nowhere else, whatever it is you're looking for, is nowhere else other than right here and right now. And not only is it right here and right now, but you will discover, I am sure, I'm 100% sure that when that is discovered, you will find out that it's always been that way. And I like what Irene had to say about what's covering up. It's all about the self and self-concept and conditioning, covering up what has already. And I like the word she uses, in innocence is there. This pure space of innocence is there, but it's covered up with all the conditioning. But the point is, it's never not here, and it's always been here. And so there's no point in looking anywhere other than here. That's my cork in the bottle, whether you remember it or not.
well,
Uh,
I'm just curious now. Were there any words that I said that you liked?
Are you asking me or
yes,
Irene?
You.
he's asking you.
I'm asking you.
Yeah, there were a few. Yeah, yeah, no. Look, there were some. Yes, there were some. But as we have said this many times. This is what's good about our podcast. It makes for good dynamism. You're in one place on this whole thing, and I'm in another place, and it makes for a good dynamic. But I will say, it makes for a good dynamic because everybody has their own little thing and path to
Okay.
try, et cetera. So maybe they can resonate with something I say, or they can resonate with something you say, or resonate with something that our guests say, Irene and our other guests. So uh, it's all good. It's all good.
Great.
See, Irene,
Well,
I always leave it for Gary to put that cork in our bottle because it's a great way to segue out of this thing. But anyway,
wonderful. Thank
it's
you.
been fantastic. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. And I
Thank you.
hope you'll
Thank you
come
so
back
much.
I hope you'll come back in the future. And especially after I read your book, I'd really like to have a podcast about all your dead friends that are up there in heaven and telling us what's going on. That could be very interesting.
Check it out. Check it out. Well, thank
I
you so
will.
much. Thank you
But I
both.
I would venture to say that they're probably not all in heaven. But I don't know. Maybe they are. Anyway, listen, Irene, when I did the radio interview with you, it was so great. I said we have to do a podcast. So I'm glad you showed up. It's really
Thanks
great.
so much.
We'll see each other on these Zoom calls on the POK network and all that stuff.
Love
So
you, Gary.
love you too. Look, I'm going to send hearts, sending hearts.
And just one more thing. Gary's been doing his radio show for quite a while. That's how we get guests to be booked on our podcast. You're the first interview on Gary's radio show that I've listened to. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Who knows why?
Well, that was Irene. Great. I love Irene.
Yeah, that was really great. She's terrific, and I'm looking forward to reading her book. I love books like that.
Because we're going to get into some of that stuff when we have our next guy on. What's his name? Martin from the Sacred Garden thing.
Stephen Martin.
Stephen Martin.
Yeah,
Stephen Martin.
we'll have him in March when his book comes out. So,
Right.
but we're open right now. So, anybody out there wants to talk about their spiritual experiences, seriously, and email us because we're looking for some hot topic conversations.
And we love hearing different stories. Everybody has a unique journey, and everybody has unique experiences, and we love to hear them all. It just goes to show it's not cookie cutter. It's not a cookie cutter, one size fits all. It's open sesame. Everybody has their own thing. We want to hear from other people about their. Because I learned a lot. We had Atala on she did her nature spirits thing and all that. I learned a lot. I'm sure Stephen Martin. I'm going to learn a lot about sacred gardening. So. I love hearing different stories, different angles, different perspectives on whatever this is.
All right, buddy. Let's put a cork in it.
Put a
Till next
cork in
time.
it. Put a cork in it. All right. Till next time.
Till next time.
Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya.
Yeah. What
Okay.
you said. What you said.
Yeah. Amen.